If you ever want to know what betrayal sounds like, it isn't screaming. It's a door creaking open at 1:30 a.m. in a house that's supposed to be safe. It's your dog lifting his head before you even move, like he heard something your heart didn't want to hear yet. It's the sight of your wife stepping inside with one heel missing, mascara smudged, hair tangled like she'd been running from something, then looking you dead in the face and whispering, "I'm sick, food poisoning." And just when you're forcing your brain to accept the lie because the truth would ruin everything, the doorbell rings. Not a neighbor, not a delivery, not anyone you know. A woman stands on your porch holding a folded sheet of paper like it's a weapon. She doesn't introduce herself with small talk. She just stares straight through you and says, "Your wife isn't sick. She's been with my husband." Then she lifts the paper slightly, proof, while your wife freezes behind you, still pretending she's dying from bad tacos. Maplewood, New Jersey is the kind of town where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. People rake their leaves, complain about taxes, and pretend they don't hear their neighbors arguing through the walls. That's why I loved it. It felt safe, predictable. Like if you kept your head down and worked hard, life would leave you alone. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 35. I keep the city's water systems running, the kind of job nobody remembers until a pipe bursts and their shower turns into an ice bath. It's early mornings, late calls, and boots that never fully dry in winter. But when I pulled into our driveway every night, I used to feel my shoulders drop, like I'd made something solid. 2-story house, 2-car garage, a fence that needed repainting, a backyard that always looked 1 week away from being perfect. We didn't live like millionaires, but it was ours, and I believed that mattered more. My wife, Tessa, was in that house like warmth. She used to meet me at the door with our dog Biscuit dancing around her ankles like I was the best thing that ever happened. She'd ramble about her marketing job, gossip about coworkers, laugh at her own jokes. She made the place feel alive. That's why the quiet had been bothering me lately. It started in small ways. A girls' night here, a team meeting there. She said her office was pushing a new project, the deadlines were brutal, and everyone was counting on her. I wanted to be the kind of husband who trusted his wife, not the guy who asked for timestamps like he was her probation officer. So, every time my gut twisted, I'd talk myself out of it. Don't be insecure, Marcus. Don't be that controlling husband. She deserves a life. But Biscuit didn't buy the story. On those nights when she stayed out late, he'd park himself by the front window like a little furry security guard. Ears sharp, body tense. Every time headlights swept across the living room wall, his tail would thump once, hopeful, then stop when the car passed. That night, I was sitting on the couch with the TV muted, not really watching anything, just waiting, listening. The house felt too still, like it was holding its breath. At 1:30 a.m., the deadbolt clicked, slow, awkward, like someone trying not to wake the whole world. Biscuit's head shot up before my body even reacted. The door opened and Tessa slid inside sideways, like she didn't want the light to hit her. Her hair was messy, not I slept wrong messy, messy like she'd been tugging at it. One heel was still on her foot, the other was dangling from her fingers. Her makeup was tired and smudged under her eyes. And her face wasn't pale like a stomach bug. It was pale like panic. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low. She flinched a little, then forced herself to look at me. I'm sick," she whispered. "Food poisoning. My stomach's killing me." She pressed a hand to her belly like she was holding herself together. Her voice shook in a way that sounded practiced, like she'd rehearsed the line in the car before walking in. I stood up slowly. Not angry, not yelling, just trying to understand the picture my brain didn't want to process. "Are you okay?" I asked. She didn't answer the question. She just moved past me toward the kitchen, grabbing the back of a chair for balance like her legs were made of rubber. She pulled a blanket off the dining bench and wrapped herself in it, breathing heavy, too heavy, like she wanted me to hear how much she was hurting. No apology, No explanation for being gone that late. No, my phone died. Just sickness. Just tacos. Just a wall. I watched her for a few seconds, the words burning in my throat. Where were you? Who were you with? Why do you look like you just got caught? But I swallowed it, because the alternative was saying the truth out loud and I wasn't ready to hear it echo in my own house. Then the doorbell rang. One clean sound slicing through the fake calm. Tessa froze. Her eyes snapped toward the hallway like the bell had called her real name. I didn't move right away. I just looked at her. Were you expecting someone? Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. The doorbell rang again. Biscuit started low growling under his breath, the way he did when a stranger came too close. I walked down the hallway, every step feeling heavier than it should, and opened the front door. A woman stood on my porch, mid-30s, coat buttoned up tight, eyes tired like she hadn't slept in days. In her hands was a folded sheet of paper, an official-looking printout creased hard like she'd been gripping it for hours. She didn't smile, didn't ask if I was Marcus, didn't pretend this was normal. She looked me dead in the eye and said, clear as a gunshot, "Your wife isn't sick. She's been with my husband." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the floor shifted. Behind me, I heard the faint scrape of the chair in the kitchen. Tessa was standing now, not acting sick anymore, just standing there, rigid, caught. The woman on my porch lifted the paper slightly, just enough for me to see the header, the clinic formatting, the cold seriousness of it. "Your name is Marcus Hale, right?" she asked. I couldn't speak. She swallowed once, like she was holding herself together with teeth and willpower. "I'm Naomi Price," she said, and I brought proof. And in that moment, my home stopped feeling safe. It started feeling like a crime scene. Naomi stood on my front porch like a crack in a mirror. One glance was enough to know something had already broken, even if you hadn't heard the sound of it falling. But instead of rushing straight at the proof she brought, my brain did what it always does when fear hits. It rewound the past. It dug through every recent moment, every sentence, every look, every sigh from Tessa, and then it asked the one question that made my chest feel heavy as stone. When did this start? 3 months ago, everything was still normal in that boring way I used to call happiness. Maplewood in the fall always looked like a postcard, rows of maple trees burning red, leaves carpeting the sidewalks, people pushing strollers in thick coats. I went to work, came home, walked Biscuit around the neighborhood, nodded to the neighbors. Tessa would be in the kitchen playing some indie pop music I could never remember the name of. She would say, "Go take a shower, I'll heat up dinner." And I would think, yes, this is home, this is life. Then girls' night started. At first, it was only once in a while. One Friday night she'd put on jeans, spray perfume, and say she was going out for drinks with the girls at a bar near Springfield Avenue. I even laughed and told her to have fun. I was proud of myself for not being the controlling husband type, not asking who's going with you, what time will you be home. But then the frequency rose like water seeping from a pipe, first a drip, then steady, and by the time you notice the whole floor is flooded. Once a month, then twice, then almost every week there was a reason. If it wasn't girls' night, it was a project meeting, a brainstorm session, a client emergency, phrases that sounded civilized, reasonable, and almost impossible to argue with. And that was the most dangerous part, because you can't fight the word deadline. Tessa also started talking in a way that felt like she was asking permission by not asking at all. "This week, I'll probably have to go out Thursday night. The team is under pressure." She didn't ask if I was okay with it. She didn't discuss it. She just announced it, as if her schedule had become its own private line, and I was only the person standing at a stop watching the train pass by. I remember one evening I was mowing the backyard, the smell of gas mixed with wet grass. The neighbor across the way was decorating for Halloween, hanging pumpkin lights on their porch. Tessa stood at the back door with her phone in her hand and asked quickly, "Have you seen my black dress?" "In the top closet," I said. "Okay," she said. and she turned away without lifting her eyes from the screen. Biscuit ran circles around my feet then, jumping up like he wanted to warn me, hey, something's off, but I brushed it aside. I grew up with a very typical man's mindset. Don't overreact, don't suspect anything until you have proof. It wasn't until her phone changed position that I started to feel cold down my spine. Before, Tessa's phone would lie face up on the coffee table. It buzzed nonstop from group chats, random memes, Target or Amazon sale alerts. She used to shove the screen toward me and say, "Look at this, it's hilarious." And I felt peaceful because I knew there was nothing to hide. Then one day, I realized it was always face down. Like a new habit, like a reflex. When a message came in, she would glance quickly and a smile would flicker across her lips. Just a thin one, but enough to make my heart sting. I asked, "Who's texting that makes you so happy?" The smile shut off like someone flipped a switch. "Oh, work," she said. "Work." That word slowly became a coat you could throw over any secret. If I walked into the room, she suddenly needed to use the bathroom. If I sat down beside her, she stood up to move the laundry. We still shared a house, a couch, a blanket, but it felt like I was living with someone who no longer wanted to be present. The scariest part wasn't that she was disappearing. It was that I was starting to change too. I started staying quiet more. I started acting like everything was fine because I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, our life would explode. And I had too much I was trying to hold together. I was preparing to start a small side business, taking maintenance contracts for plumbing and residential communities and a few shops. Nothing huge, but to me, it was my way out of working for someone else. It required good credit, clean paperwork, a reputation untouched by drama. I was scared a messy divorce would smash everything before it even started. So I told myself, don't think dirty thoughts. Don't turn marriage drama into a joke for the whole neighborhood. But there are moments you can't pretend you didn't see. One night, Tessa was in the shower. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, and the screen lit up with a notification. I didn't pick it up. I didn't even step closer. But the text was big enough that my eyes caught it, like fate was forcing it into my face. A man's name, Colin, and underneath, 2 short words, last night. I froze like I'd been nailed in place. Just 2 words, but they opened a door in my mind I could no longer shut. Right then, Tessa walked out. She saw me looking toward the kitchen, and I swear, for a single breath, fear flashed in her eyes. She lunged over, her thumb swiped once. The notification vanished as if it had never existed. She turned to me with a stiff smile and said, "Oh, spam notification, just work." But her voice didn't sound casual. It sounded like someone who had just slipped out of a trap. That night, Biscuit didn't jump onto the bed like he always did. He lay out in the hallway, eyes open, ears up, like he was guarding something I still didn't have the courage to name. And I lay beside my wife, staring at the ceiling in the dark, my heart beating slow but heavy. And for the first time in my life, I heard a sentence clearly inside my head. Maybe I'm not being paranoid. Maybe this is a wife story I never wanted to live. And the worst part was, I was starting to understand why Naomi was standing at my door with a folded piece of paper in her hand. I used to think that if I ever found out my wife betrayed me, my body would react instantly. My heart would race. My blood would boil. My hands would shake. Anger big enough to break the whole house. But the truth didn't come like a movie. The truth came in the shape of a woman walking into the house at 1:30 a.m. and trying to act like she'd just eaten the wrong thing at a taco place. That night, after the notification, Colin, last night, I stayed silent the entire evening. Not because I believed her, but because I didn't know what I would do if I opened my mouth. A man's silence isn't about looking strong. It's because he's terrified that if he says it out loud, everything will collapse. I turned on the TV just for noise. ESPN was talking about football. The commentator's voice echoed faintly, like a radio at a gas station. Biscuit lay tight against my legs, nose to the floor, but his ears were up the whole time. I watched the clock. 9:47 p.m., 10:31 p.m., 11:58 p.m., no text message. No, I'll be home late. No, my battery died. Nothing. And then, like a needle, 1:30 a.m. appeared on the screen. Biscuit lifted his head before I did. I heard the deadbolt turn slowly, catching a little, like whoever was outside was trying to open it without making noise. The door cracked open and Tessa stepped inside, but not like the Tessa I knew. She leaned to one side like she was trying to keep her balance. One heel was still on, the other dangled from her hand. Her hair was messy, not messy like wind, messy like someone had been running their fingers through it over and over, pulling, fixing, adjusting. Mascara smeared under her eyes, and there was a smell that made my stomach tighten. Not the smell of someone who threw up from food poisoning, but alcohol mixed with a different perfume. Expensive, sweet, and clinging. When she saw me stand up, she stopped short. "You're still awake?" she rasped. I looked straight into her eyes. "Where were you?" Tessa blinked like her brain was running a prepared script. I got food poisoning. Must have been Mexican food. My stomach hurt so bad." She wrapped a hand around her stomach, but the way she did it looked more like acting than pain. She tried to breathe hard, tried to moan softly, tried to make the story sound real, like if she performed well enough, the truth would erase itself. I stood still. Part of me wanted to scream, "What are you doing?" But the other part, the part that built an entire life on the word family, was afraid of the next question, because if I asked, and the answer was what I thought, I would have to live with it. "Do you need me to take you to the ER?" I asked, voice low. Tessa shook her head fast. No, I just want to lie down. I'm exhausted." She didn't look at me. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain why she disappeared. She went straight into the kitchen, pulled a chair out like she needed something to lean on, then reached for the blanket from the lounge chair and wrapped it around herself like she was cold. And that was the moment I saw it clearest. She wasn't in pain. She was scared. Scared, I would ask. Scared, I would stare too long. Scared, some detail on her would give her away. I looked down at her hands. Her nails were still perfect. No sign of vomiting, no shaking from a fever, just hands gripping the blanket too tightly. "Do you have a fever?" I asked. "I don't know, maybe," she answered vaguely. I stepped a little closer, just enough to see her collar slightly crooked, like someone had tugged it. Tessa caught me looking and adjusted it instantly. A small move, but fast, like a defensive reflex, and the feeling in my chest sharpened. This wasn't sickness. This was aftermath. I didn't say anything else. I went back to the sofa. Biscuit didn't leave the doorway, staring at Tessa like a stranger had wandered into our house. I don't know if a dog understands betrayal, but I swear he understood something was wrong. That night, Tessa curled up on the kitchen chair for about 10 minutes, then stood, walking like someone drained, and went into the bedroom. She didn't turn back. She didn't kiss me. She didn't say goodnight. She just left. And I sat there in the house I'd been proud to build into a safe home, feeling like I was standing at the edge of my own life. The next morning, she looked worse, but not in a stomach-sick way. Her eyes were swollen, the lower lids puffy, her skin wasn't flushed with fever. It was the kind of skin that's been washed by tears all night and then hurriedly covered with makeup. She moved through the kitchen like a shadow, opened the coffee container, poured carelessly. Ground spilled all over the counter, and she didn't even notice. Her phone buzzed on the table. Tessa flinched like a gun went off. Her hand snatched the phone and flipped it face down so fast she almost dropped it. I leaned in the doorway and watched. "Are you sure it's just food poisoning?" I asked quietly. She didn't look at me. "Yeah, probably," she said. A reply with no emotion, no eye contact, like she was afraid that if she met my gaze I would see the lie. I went to work, my body moving like a machine, but my mind was stuck in that kitchen. Every time my computer screen dimmed, I saw her hand grabbing the phone. At exactly 3:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Tessa, still feel awful, going to the clinic, they'll run some tests, don't worry. Clinic, tests, those words hit my instincts like a knock. I wasn't afraid she was sick anymore. I was afraid the tests would say out loud what I was still trying to avoid. That night, Tessa said she was tired and went to bed early. I waited a while, then stepped quietly into the hallway. The bedroom door was cracked. The glow of her phone cast blue light on her face. I stood where she couldn't see me, but the mirror across from the bed reflected just enough for me to see. Tessa was texting. Then she stopped. Then she began deleting. Messages slid up and disappeared. Delete, delete, delete. Like she was wiping footprints before morning. She even tilted the phone away, like she was afraid the mirror itself would betray her. I stood there frozen, heart beating heavy and slow, and in that moment, a sentence appeared in my head, clearer than anything else. Enough. Enough, Marcus. Stop lying to yourself. I turned away from the bedroom door. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront her. I just went back to the living room in silence. Biscuit lifted his head and looked at me like he was waiting for an answer we both already knew. And in the darkness of that house, for the first time, I understood, if the truth was already in the house, it would knock soon. I went to work that morning like a walking corpse. The coffee was hot but tasteless. The photocopier clacked like rain on a tin roof. My co-workers talked about next week's maintenance schedule, a pipeline that needed replacing, the city cutting the budget again. I nodded at the right moments, answered the right questions, but my mind was trapped back in my hallway at home. Tessa on the bed deleting messages like she was wiping fingerprints off a gun. I could still hear her muffled sobs behind the door. I could still see the blue phone glow in the mirror, and the word enough kept looping like a hammer driving a nail. Part of me still wanted to believe everything would explain itself, that maybe it was a misunderstanding, stress, my imagination, but my body didn't believe anymore. Near noon, I sat in front of my computer, staring at a meaningless spreadsheet about the supply costs. The cursor blinked like it was mocking me. I stood to get water, then my work email pinged, and almost at the same time my phone vibrated. I looked down, a message from Tessa. I'm at the clinic. They said they'll email the results to the family inbox. Don't worry. Family inbox? That phrase tightened something in my gut. She wrote, "Don't worry," as if I was worried about my wife's health. The truth was, I wasn't afraid she was sick. I was afraid sickness was just the excuse. I sat back down and opened my laptop, logging into our shared family inbox, the email we used for electric bills, the mortgage, car insurance, Netflix, all the normal life stuff, all the things a man thinks he can control. In the inbox, there was a new email, the subject line simple and cruel: confidential test results. My heart stalled for one beat. I stared at the screen like it was a black box recovered after a crash. I could close the laptop, stand up, walk away, pretend I hadn't seen it. I could lie to myself for a few more days, maybe months. A lot of men do. But I remembered Biscuit's eyes that night. Remembered Tessa's hand snatching the phone like instinct. Remembered Naomi standing at my door, her voice sharp as a blade. I heard it again inside my head. Enough. I clicked. The PDF opened. White background, black letters, no emotion, no morality, just the truth in numbers and clinical terms, the kind of document that doesn't care how much you hurt. It only records what happened. I skimmed the first lines, reference ranges, markers, and I barely understood. For a second, I even hoped I wouldn't understand, just so I could give myself an excuse to stay calm. Then my eyes landed in the middle, my wife's name, Tessa Hale. And right beside it, a word I never wanted to see attached to the woman I married. Positive. I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. It felt like someone unplugged me and every sound in the room turned into a dull roar. I read it again. Positive, not maybe. Not inconclusive, not stress-related. Positive for something you don't get from bad tacos or food poisoning. Part of me wanted to slam the desk, throw the laptop, call her, and scream loud enough for the whole town to hear. But I did nothing. I just sat there, quiet in a way that was terrifying. I used to think if my life ever became marriage drama, I'd burn like fire. The truth was, when it happened for real, I didn't burn. I shut off, like a light bulb shorting out, one click in my chest and everything went cold. I stopped arguing with myself. I stopped making excuses. I stopped repeating, "Don't suspect," without proof. Every sentence I'd used to keep the peace suddenly looked like a joke. I stared out my office window. People outside lived like normal. A dad walking his kid across the street. A woman jogging with headphones. A UPS truck stopping to deliver a box. Life kept moving as if nothing happened. And I had just lost 12 years in 2 lines of text. I closed the PDF, opened it again, closed it again, as if I was hoping it was a loading error, as if I wanted my eyes to be wrong. But the words stayed there, positive. In that silence, something else formed, not rage, clarity. If Tessa went to get tested, that meant she knew this was possible. That meant she lived with that risk and still came home and acted sick. That meant she looked at me and chose to lie. And the most painful part wasn't that she slept with someone else. The most painful part was that she practiced lying like it was a skill. My mind started connecting the pieces the way an engineer studies a pipeline map. What connects to what, where the leak is, where it's been covered. Project team. Late meeting, girls' night. The phone always face down. Deleted messages. The name Colin. I remembered exactly how she reacted when I joked about that name. Fast, sharp, defensive. Like the second I touched the boundary, she had to shove me back. Then suddenly a last name flashed in my head. Price. Naomi Price. One piece clicked into place with a sound scarier than any shouting. If Naomi was Colin's wife, then this wasn't just my wife's story. It was her wife's story too. A cruel life story neither of us agreed to live. I reopened Naomi's email from the night before and stared at the phone number she'd left. I could call right then, but I didn't. I stood up, went into the restroom, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, but no tears fell. My face looked like someone who had just walked through a wreck and hadn't processed that he survived. I braced both hands on the sink, took a deep breath, and said it out loud, only loud enough for me to hear. Okay, now we do this right. No explosion. No cheap revenge like those revenge stories online. I would stay calm. I would collect the truth. I would protect myself like a man who knows his value doesn't come from making a scene. It comes from refusing to let anyone keep treating him like a fool. I walked out of the restroom, returned to my desk, and for the first time in weeks my hands didn't shake. I picked up my phone and called Naomi Price. She answered on the second ring like she'd been staring at her screen all morning waiting for me. Marcus, her voice was rough and low, not the voice of someone who just cried, the voice of someone who has cried so much there are no tears left. "Yeah," I said, "it's me." A short silence. I heard her inhale, like she was preparing to set something heavy on the table. You opened it, right?" she asked. I stared at my computer screen, the PDF already burned into my mind. "Yeah," I said, "I saw it." Naomi didn't ask anything else. She only said one sentence, clear as a blade. "Meet me tonight. Harbor Bean, Hoboken, 6:30, don't bring your wife. And please, don't let anyone follow you." The way she said it sent a chill along my spine. Like this wasn't a normal marriage story anymore. It sounded like a case. "I'll be there," I said. I left work earlier than usual and told my manager it was a family issue. On the drive home, I didn't turn on music, no podcast, no radio. I only listened to the tires on asphalt and the hum of the AC like the breathing of a machine. Parts of my usual route looked like they belonged to someone else. Traffic lights, gas stations, people walking dogs, an older guy in line at Dunkin' holding a coffee bigger than his hand. The world stayed normal in a way that felt insulting. And I was driving straight into the truth. Before I went, I stopped by the house. Tessa was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup like she was sticking to the script she chose to soften me. Chicken noodle. The smell of carrots and celery drifted through the air like an apology she refused to say out loud. She turned and gave me a tired smile. "I'm feeling better," she said. "The clinic says it's just food." I looked into her eyes, not with hate, but with something stranger, like I was watching an actress backstage, still wearing the costume of her role. "Yeah," I said flatly. "Food?" The smile on her face sagged. She watched me longer, like she was trying to read my expression. Then her gaze slid to the phone on the kitchen table, face down, lying between us like a sleeping animal. "Where are you going tonight?" she asked. "Out for a bit," I said. "Something to do." She was about to ask more, but she didn't. She only nodded, forcing her voice to sound normal. "Yeah, okay." And I walked out of my own house carrying the feeling of being watched inside my own marriage. Hoboken at dusk had that pale golden light that reflected off the Hudson River like a trembling ribbon of silver. I parked 2 blocks away without knowing why. Instinct, maybe, like my brain was protecting me. Harbor Bean was small and warm, thick with espresso smell. College kids typed on laptops, a couple waited for drinks, the blender whined like a tiny storm. No one looked at me. No one knew my life had split open. Naomi sat in a corner near the window, her back straight but her shoulders weighed down. She wore a dark coat, her hair tied back, no makeup. And her eyes. Those eyes looked at me like I was someone who'd stepped out of the same wreckage. We didn't shake hands. We didn't smile. We didn't ask, "How are you?" the way Americans do when they don't really want the answer. I sat down. In front of me was a coffee I hadn't ordered. Naomi nudged it toward me. "You'll need it," she said. I didn't drink. I only looked at her. "Do you believe me now?" Naomi asked bluntly. I answered with silence, and maybe that was the truest answer. Naomi nodded once, then opened her bag. She didn't pull out papers first. She pulled out her phone. "I didn't want to do this," she said, her voice dry. "I didn't want to be the woman who knocks on another woman's door. But I can't stand feeling like the last idiot in the room." She opened her photo album and swiped. And then, one by one, the things appeared like knife strikes. Rideshare receipts, the same pickup spot near Maplewood, the same late hours. 12:23 a.m., 2:05 a.m. Naomi zoomed in on one. "Look," she said. "Destination, Hampton Inn, room 214. My hand clenched under the table. Naomi swiped again, a hotel folio, check-in time. Check-out time, room charges. And at the bottom, a small line that made my stomach turn. Room service, champagne, strawberries. Naomi stared at me without blinking. "Nobody orders champagne and strawberries at 1 in the morning for a work meeting," she said. Not cruelly, just cold. I swallowed. My throat was dry as paper. Naomi swiped again. Messages. Not something so filthy it made me want to smash the phone. Something worse, something tender, the kind of words people only use when they think they're in love. "When she sleeps, I'll sneak out. I miss you. I love you." I stared at the screen like I was staring at a corpse. And what froze me even deeper was that I recognized the way it was written. Not because I was some analyst, but because I'd lived with Tessa too long. I knew how she used periods. I knew how she used the word literally. I knew how she stretched sentences when she was trying to sound cute. Those were my wife's words. I didn't ask, "Are you sure?" I didn't have the strength. For a few seconds, we just sat there. 2 adults in a warm cafe holding hot cups we didn't drink, like we were both trying to remember how to breathe. Naomi spoke quietly, like she was speaking to herself. "He told me not to overthink. Told me I was insecure. Told me not to make it a big deal." A strange laugh broke out of me, not happy, not funny, just a cracked sound. "Tessa did the same," I said. "Girls' night, project meeting, food poisoning." Naomi looked at me, tired but sharp. "So what do you want to do?" she asked. I stared out the window. Outside, people laughed and lived their normal life stories. And I was watching my own life get unmasked. "I don't want to scream," I said slowly. "I don't want to fight. I just want the truth standing in the room, with nowhere left for her to twist it. Naomi nodded like she'd been waiting for that. Me too, she said. I want him to hear it out loud, in front of someone he can't lie to. A silence. Then Naomi lowered her voice like she was sealing a decision. Tonight, she said. Your house, your kitchen. The exact place she walked in at 1:30 a.m. and performed. My heart thumped hard, but it didn't shake anymore. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't floating in suspicion. I was standing on the ground of the truth, even if it was brutally cold. I nodded. Okay, I said, if you're ready, I'll do it with you. Naomi slid her phone back into her bag. She didn't smile. She didn't say thank you. She only looked straight at me and said something that made me understand this wasn't cheap revenge. We're not taking revenge, Naomi said. We're just ending the part where we're treated like idiots. I stood, paid, no hug, no handshake. We only nodded at each other, two strangers dragged into the same marriage drama, then walked out of the cafe. I got into my car, started the engine, and checked the time. 6:58 p.m., only a few hours left before my doorbell rang again. And this time, I wasn't going to let Tessa flip anything face down ever again. I had never been afraid of a doorbell until that night. Because once you know the truth, you're no longer afraid of discovering it. You're afraid of the moment the truth becomes spoken words, because once it exists in the air, no one can stuff it back down like it was never swallowed. New Jersey gets dark fast. Near 8 p.m., the porch was lit only by a dim yellow light over the cracked steps. Inside, Tessa still wore her loose sweater, her hair tied low, moving around the kitchen like a devoted wife. The pot of soup bubbled steadily on the stove. That small sound felt both ridiculous and hateful, like background music for a cheap performance. She tried to talk like everything was normal. "Did you eat anything today?" she asked, stirring the soup, glancing at me. "Want me to make toast too?" I leaned against the counter, keeping distance. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her phone on the table, face down, like always. "Not hungry," I said. Tessa paused for a beat. "Are you... What's wrong? Are you mad at me?" Her voice softened, stretching the way it used to, aiming for that old spot in me, the spot of a husband who always wanted peace. But there was no place for that tonight. Tonight, there was only the truth. I heard a car stop outside. Tessa heard it too. The spoon in her hand froze. Her whole body went stiff like ice. I didn't even need to look at her to know her heart had dropped to the floor. Then ding-dong. A clean doorbell rang out. Not rushed, not frantic, like someone who knew she was carrying something that would silence the entire house. Tessa turned fully, eyes wide. "Who is it?" she whispered, almost voiceless. I didn't answer. I walked into the hallway. Biscuit followed, his fur slightly raised. My dog, for the first time in his life, looked at the house like it wasn't ours anymore. I opened the door. Naomi stood there in the same dark coat, the same exhausted eyes. But tonight there was something extra in them. Not anger, steel, the kind of steel you get after you've been betrayed too long and you stop asking permission to be respected. In her hand was a folded sheet of paper. "Evening," Naomi said low. I stepped aside. "Come in." No social greetings, no sorry for the inconvenience. Just a woman stepping into another person's home like she was stepping into the place where a lie had to end. Naomi walked straight into the kitchen. Tessa was still standing there, spoon in her hand, like if she set it down, the world would collapse. Naomi stopped about 2 meters from her. She didn't sit, she didn't lean on a chair. All three of us stood there like witnesses in front of a sentence. Naomi looked Tessa in the eye. What are you doing here?" Tessa stammered, her voice shaking. I don't understand." I almost laughed at that. "Don't understand," the most familiar line from someone whose mask is slipping. Naomi didn't answer the question. She simply unfolded the paper. The sound of it opening was louder than it should have been, like a lock snapping open in a room that had been sealed for years. Naomi glanced down and then lifted her eyes to Tessa. When she began to read, her voice was calm in a way that made my skin go cold, calm like a doctor delivering bad news. "Patient Tessa Hale," Naomi read. Tessa jerked like she'd been slapped. "Stop," Tessa whispered. "Please, don't do this." She stepped forward, hand reaching like she wanted to snatch the paper. I moved between them, not to protect Naomi from Tessa, but to make sure Tessa didn't run and didn't touch the truth. Naomi kept reading without changing her tone. Screening panel indicates, "Stop, Naomi, please. Can we talk privately?" Tessa choked out. Naomi cut her off with a single word, "No." Then she continued, eyes sliding down the lines like a blade across glass. And then it came. That word, the word that had killed half my life in an office chair, positive. Just one word, but it hit the tile floor of my kitchen like a knife dropped on stone. It turned every lie, food poisoning, bad tacos, clinic says it's nothing, into something filthy. Tessa made a strange sound, not quite crying, not quite screaming, like her lungs didn't know how to breathe when there was nowhere left to hide. Naomi read on, consistent with transmission through intimate contact. Tessa shook her head wildly. No, this is a misunderstanding." And right then the phone on the kitchen table vibrated. The buzzing dragged on like it was waiting for its cue. Tessa whipped her head toward it. Her eyes locked on the phone like a dying person staring at water. The screen lit up. She couldn't flip it face down this time. The name was bright and clear in the dark kitchen. Colin. No last name, no explanation. No more proof needed. Every piece snapped into place with a click inside my head. Tessa lunged forward on instinct. I was faster by a fraction. I stepped in and placed the tip of my shoe on the edge of the phone. Not crushing it, not breaking it, just pinning it there like you pin a snake to the ground. Tessa froze, breathing hard, eyes wide. Naomi watched, then looked back at Tessa, her voice still steady. "He's calling," Naomi said. "Do you still want to perform now?" Tessa burst into loud, ugly, panicked tears. "It was only one time," she screamed. "I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. I was taken advantage of." Naomi let out a short, dry laugh, not amused, not mocking. The laugh of someone who has read too many lies. "One time?" Naomi repeated. "Then what are the hotel bills for 3 nights? Champagne, strawberries, pasta for 2. You call that one time?" Tessa turned to me like she was grabbing the last scrap of something to hold on to. "Marcus, listen to me. I was lonely. I lifted my hand. "Stop," I said. Not loud, not shouted, but that single word cut her off like the sound had been switched off. I stepped closer and looked her in the eyes. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. "You didn't accidentally walk into a hotel," I said slowly. "You didn't slip and fall into his bed." Tessa's chin trembled. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I continued, colder than I believed I could be. "That wasn't a mistake, Tessa. That was a choice. And you chose it, many times." The phone under my shoe kept vibrating, then stopped, and then started again, like a man panicking because he couldn't reach his secret. Naomi folded the paper and set it on the table beside the phone. "The truth is here," Naomi said, looking at Tessa. "No one can twist it anymore." For a few seconds, the only sound in the kitchen was the soup bubbling on the stove. Blub, 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 like it was laughing at us. Naomi checked her watch, then looked at me. "I'm done," she said. No insults, no slap, no dramatic ending line. She simply walked out of the kitchen, past us, and opened the door herself and left. The door clicked shut softly, but that click was louder in my head than any slammed door. Tessa stood there collapsing, both hands gripping the edge of the table, mascara streaking down her face like spilled ink. She whispered, her voice breaking, "Marcus, please." I looked at the paper on the table, at the phone, at the pot of soup, and for the first time in months my mind felt empty but clear. I didn't need to ask anything else. Everything had been read out loud in my house. in the kitchen I used to believe was the safest place in my life. After Naomi left, the house went so quiet it felt hard to breathe. Not the normal quiet of a suburban night, where neighbors turn their lights off early and a laugh track leaks through the walls. This was the kind of quiet where you could hear metal cooling, hear your own heartbeat hitting your ribs, hear the truth sitting on the table while no one had the strength to pick it up. Tessa was still in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter as if letting go would make her collapse onto the tile. The phone beside her lit up and went dark, lit up and went dark. Colin called one more time and then stopped, as if he finally understood there would be no door opening for him anymore. Tessa turned to me, her eyes swollen red, tears streaking her face like rain on a painting. She spoke fast, like she was racing time. "Marcus, I'm sorry, I'll fix it. I'll do everything." Her voice cracked, but the words poured out like a storm. "We'll do therapy. I'll book it tomorrow. I'll quit my job. I'll switch companies. I'll block Colin. I'll change my number. I'll delete all my social media, anything you want." She stepped forward half a step, then stopped, like she was afraid I would step back. "I don't want to lose you," Tessa said. "I don't want to lose my home. I just got lost." Lost. I looked at her for a long time, and the strangest thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is like fire, it needs oxygen. It needs hope to keep burning. But tonight, hope died in that kitchen. And when hope dies, anger has nowhere left to live. I didn't sit down. I didn't hold her. I didn't argue. I just stood there, feeling like I'd stepped out of a crash people call a marriage. Tessa kept talking, barely breathing. "Tell me what you want me to do. I'll prove it. I raised my hand, the same way I had said stop earlier, but this time I didn't cut her off with a single word. I let her talk until her voice ran out, like a bottle drained to the last drop. When she finally went quiet, the only sounds left were the soup bubbling on the stove and Biscuit's nails scratching softly at the floor, as if even he didn't understand why his two owners suddenly looked like strangers. I turned and walked to the drawer in the corner of the kitchen, the one we kept the important things in, passports, the mortgage documents, insurance papers, a few old photos. The kind of things you don't touch very often until your life starts breaking. Tessa watched me open the drawer, her eyes narrowing with fear. What are you doing?" I flipped through a few stacks of paper and pulled out an empty beige folder, the cheap kind you buy at Staples when you need to do something serious. I set it down on the table between us. I didn't slam it, I didn't throw it, I just placed it there. But the small dry tap of the folder against wood sounded like a stamp. Tessa stared at the folder, then at me, and she understood immediately. Not because she was smarter, but because there are things people understand in a second. The moment a man has already left in his mind, even if his body is still standing there. "No, Marcus, please." She shook her head, her voice shrinking, almost childish. "Don't do this. We can save this." I looked straight into her eyes. "Tessa," I said, and even I was surprised at how calm my voice was. "You can't save something you've been breaking every day." Her mouth opened like she wanted to fight back, like she wanted to drag the story into that place where both people share the blame. But tonight, she didn't have the material for that anymore. I kept going, slow and clear. "You're staying at Aaron's tonight." Tessa froze. "What?" "Pack a bag," I said. "Clothes for a few days. Your personal things. Give me your keys." She stepped back like I'd hit her. "No," her voice jumped higher. "This is my house. I'm your wife. How can you—" I didn't shout. I cut through her with finality. "This is my house, too," I said, "and I need to breathe." Tessa started sobbing, the kind of crying that doesn't try to look decent. "I'm going to die, Marcus. I swear I'll fix it. I shook my head. "Tomorrow," I said, "we'll talk about separation. And I'm seeing a lawyer." The word lawyer shut her down like someone grabbed her throat. Her eyes went wide like I had just pulled down the last curtain. You're really doing this?" she whispered. I looked at the phone on the table, at the paper Naomi had left behind, at the empty folder waiting to be filled. "I already did," I said, "the moment you walked into this house at 1:30 a.m. and performed." That sentence landed hard. Tessa's face tightened, like she finally understood that she couldn't keep playing the victim anymore. She wiped her tears again and again, desperate for a reasonable line, a way out, but there wasn't one. She looked at the soup pot like it could save her, then looked back at me, her voice softening into her last move. "Marcus, I love you," and I heard it, and it wasn't warm anymore. It sounded like a line. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door and put on my jacket. Biscuit stood up on instinct like he thought I was taking him out. Tessa panicked. "Where are you going?" I stood in the entryway, staring at the house I used to call a safe home, the house I believed nothing could break. "Somewhere I can breathe," I said. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently, the same soft click Naomi had made. Outside, the cold air hit my face. It made my lungs ache, but it was real pain, not the fake pain inside that kitchen. I stood still for a few seconds, looking down at the cracked front step, at the trees in the yard shivering in the wind, at the neighbor's porch light still glowing. Everything was the same. Only I wasn't. I took out my phone and texted Naomi one line. "Thank you for not letting me feel crazy," Naomi replied almost immediately. "We did what we had to." I put my phone away, looked up at the dark sky, and for the first time in weeks I realized I was breathing deeper. Not because I had won, but because I had stopped lying to myself. And I knew, from that moment on, everything would ripple outward. Both families, friends, this small town, everyone would have an opinion about how a husband should act. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, I needed one thing: silence, clean, real. I slept at a motel near Route 24 that night. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I needed a place where no memories stuck to the walls. The room was cold, the smell of fresh bleach still in the air, the blanket thin as paper. And strangely, I managed to sleep a few hours. Not deep, not peaceful, but enough to wake up and understand one thing. Last night wasn't a nightmare. It was real life. When I checked my phone the next morning, the screen was swarming with notifications like a broken beehive. 10 missed calls, 17 messages. Most of them were familiar numbers. Tessa's mother, Erin, her sister, even a cousin I only saw at Thanksgiving. Mixed in was my brother's number from Pennsylvania. The HOA manager even emailed about lawn maintenance like the universe was mocking me. "Your life can burn, but you still have to cut your grass on time." I exhaled and called Erin back first. She answered immediately. "Marcus, oh my God, Tessa's here. She's been crying since last night. What happened? Did you two fight?" I stared out the motel window at a parking lot full of gray sedans, people dragging suitcases like lives that had nothing to do with mine. "It's not a fight," I said. "Erin, she cheated." There was a pause. I heard Erin inhale, then her voice got smaller. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "There's proof." Erin didn't ask for details, but I could hear the conflict in her voice. "The way you love your sister, but also know a man like me isn't making something up for entertainment." "Okay," Erin said. She says you misunderstood. She says you've been cold, you don't care." I let out a tiny laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the script. "Yeah," I said. "She would say that." Erin sighed. "Marcus, her mom is furious. She says you have to talk properly, you have to do counseling. 12 years of marriage," I cut in, still calm. "Erin, thank you, but I heard enough lies last night. I'm doing this through a lawyer." "You're really seeing a lawyer?" Erin asked. "Yeah," I said, "today." As soon as I hung up, my phone rang again. This time it was Tessa's mother. I hesitated a few seconds, then answered. "Marcus." Her voice was sharp and high. "What are you doing? You kicked her out? She's your wife." I closed my eyes and kept my breathing steady. Older people have a way of speaking like they're passing judgment without hearing the evidence. "I didn't kick her out," I said. "I told her to leave so everything could stop." "Stop?" She scoffed. "Marriage isn't a switch. You think everyone is perfect like you? Everyone makes mistakes. You have to forgive. You have to be the bigger man. The phrase hit my ear like a punch. I'd heard it my whole life. People use it like a rope around a man's neck. Be quiet. Endure it. Because silence is noble. I answered slowly, clearly. Ma'am, I'm not throwing away 12 years over one mistake. I'm ending this because 12 years turned into a lie. She went quiet for a beat, then turned the way family fights always turn. Are you sure you didn't do anything wrong? You're always at work. You neglect her. You think she wasn't lonely? I stared at the motel coffee, black as mud. I worked to build a home, I said, not to create space for cheating. She exhaled harshly. You'll regret this, Marcus. When you're old. I ended the call. Not because I hated her, but because I wasn't going to stand in the mud. By noon, I went back to the house to grab a few things and change before meeting a lawyer. The house was silent, clean, in a way that felt terrifying. The soup had gone cold. There was still a water ring on the kitchen table from the glass Tessa had used. Those small things used to be life. Now they looked like exhibits. Biscuit ran up and pressed against my leg, then looked up at me like he was asking, "Where is she?" I rubbed his head. "It's okay," I said, but really, I was saying it to myself. I'd just opened the drawer to grab my passport when my phone buzzed. An unknown number, I answered out of habit. Marcus, a man's voice, fast, breath tight like he was trying to shove words in before I could hang up. "This is Marcus." "Hey man, it's Colin." My throat went cold instantly. "Colin?" I repeated. "Yeah. Look, can we talk?" he said. "It's not what you think, bro." Bro. The word came out like a dirty joke, like we were drinking buddies who had simply misunderstood a woman. I stayed silent and let him reveal himself. "Listen," Colin continued, pleading. "We were both drunk. Things at home have been rough. You know how it is. I never meant to hurt you." I closed my eyes. The exact script: alcohol, marriage problems, no intention, no responsibility. "You called to apologize?" I asked, flat. "Yeah, man, I cut him off. "Don't call me man. And don't call this a misunderstanding." He paused, then softened into that man-to-man tone. "Marcus, from one husband to another, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm apologizing, that's all." I let out a short, cold laugh. "You want to do the right thing?" "Yeah. Then do the right thing with your wife first," I said. "Tell Naomi the truth. That's where you need courage. Not calling me to get absolution." He stumbled. "It's complicated. She wouldn't understand." "No," I said. "It's not complicated. It's just inconvenient for you." He tried to keep talking, but I was done. "I don't owe you a conversation," I said. "I owe myself quiet." I hung up. Right after, I took a screenshot of the call log, noted the time, saved it into an evidence folder on my laptop. Proof, not emotion. Then I blocked the number. I stood in the kitchen for a few seconds staring at my phone and realized there's a strange kind of power in not reacting the way people expect. No screaming, no insults, just closing the door. On the way to the lawyer's office, I got a text from Naomi. He tried calling me too. Different number, same script. I texted back, "Same here." I blocked him. Naomi replied, "Good. Keep everything. We'll need it." That was the moment I saw it clearly. This wasn't a relationship story anymore. It was turning into something colder. Paperwork, timelines, evidence. A life story where the ending is always a PDF. I arrived at the lawyer's office downtown, an old building, wood floors that creaked, the smell of paper and ink. I sat in the waiting chair, my hand tight around a USB drive in my pocket. And for the first time since Naomi knocked on my door, I didn't feel like I was sinking anymore. I was standing, because I knew what I was going to do next. The lawyer's office wasn't memorable, and that was exactly what made it unsettling. A small downtown room, frosted glass door, old wood floor that squeaked with every step. A few certificates on the wall, a couple photos of the attorney beside people who probably once thought, "I will never need this place." A cheap coffee maker in the corner, dry, bitter smell in the air. The attorney's name was Peter Landry. He was in his 50s, spoke slowly, didn't judge, the kind of man who had seen enough marriages fall apart that nothing surprised him anymore. He asked basic questions. No kids, house bought after marriage, retirement accounts, whose name is on the cars. It all sounded like a bank checklist. Then he looked at me and said, "Marcus, the most important thing right now is stay calm, keep evidence, keep your words short. Don't argue with your wife for long, don't text emotionally. From this point on, everything can become evidence." I nodded. I understand. I handed him the USB, the test PDF, screenshots, the hotel folio Naomi showed me, Colin's call log, the rough timeline I'd written. Peter plugged it in, skimmed quickly, then looked up. "You're doing the right thing," he said, "but I need you to do one more thing. Lock everything down. Back it up in 2 places. And from now on, communicate with her only when necessary, as short as possible." I left his office with a stack of papers in my hand and a strange feeling in my chest. Not relief, not worse pain, but structure. When pain has structure, it doesn't drown you as easily. I got home in the late afternoon. Maplewood was washed in a pale gray. Kids were still kicking a ball around near the schoolyard like nothing had changed. Biscuit ran out to greet me, circled my legs, then darted to the doorway like he was searching for the second person he'd learned to call family. I rubbed his head. "It's okay," I said, and this time I wasn't sure who I was talking to. I opened my laptop on the kitchen table when my phone vibrated. Tessa calling. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I didn't want to answer, but the lawyer had said only when necessary, and I knew she wouldn't stop until I picked up. I answered, put it on speaker, set the phone on the table like an object with no life. "Marcus," her voice came through, no shaking now, no choking, no sobs, just something sharp like fingernails scraping glass. "So, you're really doing this, Tessa," I said evenly. "Are you okay?" She scoffed. "Okay? You threw me out, hired a lawyer, and you're asking if I'm okay?" I didn't react. I let her keep going. "You're ending 12 years because of one thing, one mistake. You won't even fight for us. You just walk away. Your ego got hurt, so you throw your whole family in the trash." Ego? There it was. When apologies stop working, people try to push you into the role of the guilty one. I took a breath. "Tessa," I said, "I'm not ending this because of one mistake. I'm ending it because you turned our life into a lie." "Oh, give me a break," she snapped. "You're not perfect either. You think you're an angel? You're always working. Where are you? Do you know how lonely I was? You left me in that house. What about me?" she nearly yelled. "You never ask how I feel. You only care about the house, your career, your side business. What am I to you, a piece of furniture?" I closed my eyes for a second, feeling like I was listening to someone trying to fill a hole by dumping dirt beside it. She wasn't denying cheating anymore. She was trying to prove I deserved it. I answered slowly, each word clean. "You want to say I didn't care, okay? Maybe sometimes I was clumsy. Maybe I worked too much. But I came home, I was honest. I built that house so we could have a safe place." She went quiet for a beat, then fired back. "So, what do you want from me?" I apologized. I apologized 100 times. "What else do you want?" I looked out the kitchen window at the maple tree dropping leaves, paper scraps blowing across the yard. "I want you to tell the truth," I said, "but you only performed. You performed being sick. You performed food poisoning. You performed clinics as nothing. You performed until Naomi read the truth out loud in front of you." I heard Tessa's breathing tighten, like she wanted to cry again, but she held it back and switched tones. "You know what?" she said, low but poisonous. "You're going to regret this. No one can live alone forever, Marcus. You think you're strong? You'll see." I gave a small laugh, not at her but at the threat of someone losing control. "I'd rather live quietly alone," I said, "than live with a performance every day." She went silent for a few seconds, then threw her last line. "So, you trust Naomi more than your own wife?" I didn't need to answer any more. Colin's name had answered it the night Naomi stood in my kitchen. "Tessa," I said, "tomorrow we talk about separation through the lawyer." She tried to keep talking, but I cut it with the same word that ended her show in the kitchen. "Enough." I ended the call. I didn't block her. The lawyer had told me to keep a channel open if needed, but I set the phone down like something dirty. I sat still for a few seconds. Then I opened my laptop. I knew there was one thing that would keep me from ever wavering again. The timeline. Tessa had synced her work calendar to the family laptop, a stupid, careless mistake. Maybe she thought I would never check. Maybe she thought I was the kind of husband who only believed. I opened the calendar. Team strategy session, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Client presentation prep, 8 p.m. Late project review, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. It looked professional. Then I pulled up the evidence folder, the Hampton Inn Folio, room 214, check-in at 8:52 p.m., check-out at 12:31 a.m., the rideshare receipts at 12:23 a.m. and 2:05 a.m. I placed them side by side on the screen. Calendar entries, receipts. They lined up like teeth in a saw. Night after night. Hour after hour. Lies written in advance. I printed the calendar, printed the receipts, printed the timeline. Stacked each page in order like a case file. No red pen, no notes, no need to write cheater in the margins. The truth already spoke loud enough. I gathered it all and slid it into the beige folder on the table, the folder that wasn't empty anymore. When I closed it, the small tap sounded soft. But in my chest, something else sounded louder. A confirmation. I'm not crazy, I'm not imagining things, I just trusted the wrong person. And once you look the truth in the face like that, you never go back to being blind. There's a kind of ending that doesn't explode. No slap, no throwing things. No dramatic collapse in the yard like in movies. Just silence that stretches long enough for you to realize the thing you called a marriage died before the paperwork ever showed up. 3 weeks after Naomi knocked on my door, Maplewood slid into real cold. The leaves were mostly gone. The streets were empty and gray in the early mornings. People pulled their scarves higher and walked faster. The world kept moving. And I lived like someone cleaning out a room that had been dirty for too long. I didn't make a scene. I didn't post online. I didn't turn my life into revenge stories for strangers to watch. I just did what needed doing. The way I always handled a leaking pipe, shut the valve, inspect, replace, seal. Tessa stayed at errands. Sometimes she texted. Short messages thrown like fishing hooks into water. "You're overreacting. Can you give me one chance? I miss home." I didn't answer those. I only answered what was logistical, belongings, paperwork, a time to pick things up. One Friday night I had just walked Biscuit when the doorbell rang. Not repeated, not frantic, just one ring, like whoever stood outside had rehearsed what they would say. I looked through the peephole. Tessa. She wore a long beige coat, hands shoved into her pockets like she was holding herself together. Her eyes were still beautiful, but lack of sleep made them deeper, darker. A small bag sat by her feet, the kind people bring when they want a serious talk but still hope to be invited inside. I opened the door, but not wide. I stood in the frame, leaving only a narrow slit of the hallway behind me. "Tessa," I said. She looked up at me, and for the first 2 seconds the hard shell disappeared, and what was left was just a scared woman. I'm begging you," she said softly. "Just 5 minutes. I don't have to come in, just 5 minutes." I looked at her for a long time, then nodded. 5 minutes, I said, exactly 5. She exhaled like she had been saved. She stepped back a little so I could keep the door closed the way I wanted. Not because I was afraid she would do something, but because I didn't want that house to hold one more performance. She started fast, like she had built the whole speech in her head. "Marcus, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. But people come back from worse. I know I hurt you, I know. But we have history. We have a house. We have—" She swallowed. I still love you. A cold wind moved across the porch. Tessa pulled her coat tighter. I saw her fingers tremble slightly, maybe from cold, maybe from fear. You don't even look at me anymore, she continued, her voice thickening. I know you're building a wall, but I'm asking you, one chance. I'll change for real, therapy, church, anything. I'll prove it. I listened while my mind replayed the kitchen, the paper, the word positive, the screen lighting up with Colin. Tessa stopped when she realized I wasn't reacting. She searched my eyes for the old crack, the place I used to soften. Marcus, she whispered. I took a long breath. Tessa, I said. You can't repair what you broke every day. Her face tightened. Are you punishing me? I'm apologizing. I shook my head. No, I'm not punishing you. I looked straight at her. My voice not loud but locked like a bolt. I'm just not participating in that lie anymore. Her mouth opened to argue, but I kept going, firm. We can't fix something you keep smashing and then asking me to pick up. You didn't just make one bad choice. You built an entire secret life on top of our life. She froze. Her eyes filled again. So it's really over? She asked, trembling. I didn't answer like a cold man. I answered like a human. Yes, I said, it's over. She looked at me like a door had shut and the key was gone. And maybe, for the first time, Tessa understood that not every apology buys back respect. I checked my watch. 5 minutes are up, I said, gentle but solid. She blinked hard, tears falling. I don't know how to live without you. I opened the door a little wider, not to invite her in, but to give her one final sentence, like a period at the end of a line. Take care of yourself, Tessa. Then I closed the door, no slam. No rage, just closed, soft, final, enough. A few weeks later, an email from the lawyer arrived. Subject line, draft separation agreement, please review. Another PDF. But this time it wasn't proof of betrayal. It was a map for what came next. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table. I opened the file. Page after page, the house, the car, the retirement account. Who keeps what, who pays what? The things that used to be us had turned into percentages and signatures. I read each line, not rushing, not shaking. Then I picked up a pen. At the bottom of the last page there was a blank space waiting for my name. I wrote Marcus Hale. As the ink moved across the paper, I felt a click in my chest. Not happiness. Clean. Like I'd finally finished clearing out a messy room. I set the pen down, leaned back, and looked out the window. The New Jersey sky that day was clear blue. Cold, but sharp. Biscuit lay at my feet, breathing evenly. The house was quiet. No deadbolt turning at 1:30 a.m., no phone buzzing face down, no performance. Just me, and the peace I once thought I had to trade my self-respect to keep. Turns out I didn't. You don't have to scream to be strong. A husband can stay calm and still protect himself. Respect is not something you beg for. It's something you keep. And if you've been listening to this story to this point, if you've ever felt that same gut twist I felt, don't ignore it. Don't explode. Don't do something reckless. Keep a cool head. Collect facts. Protect yourself. Because you deserve peace under your own roof. If you were in my situation, what would you do? Comment your answer below. I read every one. And if this story woke something up in you, like and subscribe, because the next part gets even tighter. Court, money, and the ending for Colin and Tessa won't be as easy as they think.